everyone, we're here with Greg Jacobs, author of Hell on Wheels. It's killer book about tour stories, mainly focused around punk bands, which, if you know, I love all sorts of music, and punk is freaking cool. The book is super fucking awesome. Greg, I want to say thank you. I greatly appreciate you taking time out of your night to come and chat with me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Hell
So,
yeah. Yeah. So like for you, what got you into writing the book?
it's kind of I tell this story that I kind of sound like a victim in writing a book, but uh, honestly, this is a revised edition of a book that I did in 1994, and that one came about by I shared an office with a book publisher in San Diego. I was managing bands, he was publishing books, but he was the only author on his press. So he would yell through the wall and say, "You need to write me a book so I can have a different author." I'm like, dude, I was an art major. I'm not a I'm not an English major. I can't write. And I mentioned that to my mom, and she said, "Oh, you should get ask a bunch of bands tour stories because you always love hearing them when your bands would come home that you managed and when you went on the road, like the stories are just great." And I was like, "Wow, mom, that's a great idea." So yeah, so that's what we did in 94. And then in about 2021, I think, some guy on the Naked Ray Gun page on Facebook, this is a cool book, whatever. And all of a sudden I started getting these messages on Facebook. "Are you the guy that wrote this book? Where can I get one?" And I'm like, "Oh man, it's been out of print for 30 years,
Yeah.
basically." um, but a publisher happened to see that and said, "Hey, I have your original book. Do you want to do a revised edition of it?" And I was like, all right. I mean, it was during COVID. I was sitting at home doing nothing anyway, basically. So and most of the bands were too, because they couldn't tour. So it was kind of a good time to catch everybody. So that's really how, I mean, it's all my mom's fault, really.
Yeah. Blame mom. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's awesome though that she like that she was like, "Hey, do this because you I think are a lot like me where we grew up just absolutely infatuated with music, and to talk to the bands and hear the stories, it's almost like living vicariously through them, you know.
Totally.
You get to it's nice to ask them questions and get little funny stories like, "Oh, look at, fucking the Asexuals fighting with the biker gang," right? Like
I love that story.
it's a really good way to open up, and that one like hit home for me because I grew up in Detroit.
Oh, okay, cool.
So I'm like, "Oh yeah, like hometown," like so it really grabbed me.
Do you
So
know the venue that they were talking about? I can't remember the name of it right now.
no, no, I think so I think they were there in what, like 84.
Yeah.
Um, at that point how old was I? I was probably 7 or 8 years old. S-
Oh,
s- Still
okay.
like that was the year the Tigers won the World Series.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm a bit older. 84. I graduated high school in 83, and I think had already been kicked out of my first college in 1984.
Yes. When? So what did you go to college for?
Um, Originally I had no idea what I was going for, but it was just something that my dad said you did, and I was like, all right, I will. And I was a business major at first, and then I took my first econ class, and I was like, well, this is definitely not for me. Um, and then I was asked to leave due to poor grades, and I ended up kind of reigniting my passion for photography and art. So when I actually got serious and went back to school to graduate, I got an art degree with a photography and a graphic design influence.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. A lot better than econ, huh?
Yeah, yeah. I made it through college with never having to write a research paper. That was
Yeah.
yeah. I don't most of my friends are like, how'd you get around that? I'm like, I was creative in the classes that I picked.
That's so awesome. So did you translate like the photography into other things?
Well, I've I used to shoot like band promo photos and stuff, and I love to shoot live music even still.
Mhm.
So I work for this I shoot for a magazine called New Noise magazine. Do you know
Oh
New
yeah,
Noise?
I do. Yeah.
I've been a photographer for them for a few years now, but I honestly haven't been working with them that much lately. I just haven't been shooting that much, but I'm still on the roster. So it's fun. Like it's really they get me into shows for free and I give them photos for free. Works out great.
Yeah, it's a great relationship.
Yeah.
My wife's like, do you hope the podcast makes you rich? I was like, no, I just want to go to shows and see bands. Like
Yeah,
super like easy, you know?
totally. Yeah.
So what bands for you like early on help guide your like obsession with music?
Um, I, s- I've been, I think probably Cheap Trick and Kiss were kind of my gateway drugs into punk rock. And then I really got into punk rock about 1980, probably when I was like 15. That shows you how old I am. Uh, there is a great venue I grew up in Orange County, California, like Costa Mesa and Newport Beach. I don't know how well you know geography, but there is a punk rock venue called um, the Cuckoo's Nest back then.
Okay.
The Vandals sing about it, actually. They have a song called Urban Struggle that talks about fights in the parking lot with the Cowboys next door, which is totally true. And then they did another song called Pat Brown or The Legend of Pat Brown, and he was trying to run cops over in the parking lot of the Cuckoo's Nest. So it was a pretty crazy venue, but that's where all the kind of Southern California punk bands played. I mean, Adolescents, Circle Jerks, TSOL, Black Flag, anybody you can name from that era, they played there.
Right on.
And I saw most of them. I missed the Black Flag show because I made the mistake of asking my mom if I could go instead of just going. And it turned out that it was Henry's first show.
Oh,
So
that
I still bring that up to my mom, and I'm almost 60. I'm like, Mom, you wouldn't let me go to this show, and it was a piece of punk rock history that you made me miss.
that's like an iconic show. Like,
Yeah,
and I hate when that happens because it's like you're like, oh, I'm gonna go to the show, and then whatever pops up, and you're like, oh shit, I can't go. And then everyone's like, oh, you missed blah blah blah.
ex yeah,
Damn it. I don't want to
exactly.
miss it, you know? So, like, are there some shows from back then that really stick out for you as, just fantastic? Like, oh, I'm so glad I didn't miss that show.
You know, every show at the Cuckoo's Nest for me was really special because it was only open from 1980 to 81,
Mm,
and it really crammed a lot of shows in at once. I remember this. The two shows that stick out in my head are the Circle Jerks and then a separate show with Fear. And I just remember the the pit, the slamming, whatever you want to call it. The Circle Jerks, if you fell over, people would pick you up,
hmm.
and it was a fun communal, kind of like what it was supposed to be. When Fear played,
Got
if you fell over, you got stomped and pushed. It was really a different aggressive, it was just covered in spit, which was not normal, but he would antagonize people.
Oh
and
yeah.
he's holding his guitar with like thing hanging off his arm and hanging off his guitar, and he's pointing at him saying, "This is a clam and this is a blah blah blah." It was it really made an impression on me. It was so gross.
That's so awesome. I like those. There's a band now, the Convalescents, that they don't throw out real stuff, but they take like Halloween tongues, like bloody tongues, and throw them
Nice.
out in the crowd. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, nice. Like Guar kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, not quite to that level, but it's nice to have that interaction with the crowd, and I think the crowd really gets into it. Some of the like a little kid at the show is like, "Ooh, that's so gross." Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's perfect. That's great.
Um, is there a story in the book that really like that you like more than the rest of the stories?
Um, you know, I honestly I've read that book probably 50 times trying to find typos and creating the index,
Mm.
um, which was my idea to create the index and never I if I can give anybody one piece of advice is never create an index if you write a book because it's really a pain in the ass. Um, trying to think. I love Billy Milano's story actually, because it's so outrageous, and I'm not. Well, I'm sure it's true because Billy. I don't know if you know Billy, but he's a wild man.
Mhm.
He have you gotten to that story in the book yet? The
I
SOD
haven't.
story?
Now, I actually had just finished I just finished the Get Up Kids, so I'm like still
Uh,
super fresh in the book.
okay. So Billy's story, a, a summary of Billy's story is they were on SOD was on tour. He's in San Francisco. They're shooting I can't remember the movie. Go Kill Yourself or something like that is a
Yeah.
movie that SOD made. So they're shooting that, and Billy goes in and talks to the promoter and says, "We're filming." And the promoter says, "No, you're not." And they argue and they hash it out. Then Billy says he goes back and goes to sleep in the bus. And one of the roadies wakes him up and says, "Billy, you got to come talk to the promoter again. He's saying we can't film." So Billy says, "I'm in my skivvies and my a white tank top and socks, and I march up this. I go flying up the stairs. I start screaming at the promoter, and the end result is Billy is holding the promoter by his ankles out the window with Scott Ian underneath, who was playing in SOD, saying, "Billy, don't kill him, don't kill him." And Billy pulled the guy back in and apparently got paid in advance and was allowed to shoot the
I
film.
mean, that's one way to get it done, right?
No, I mean, I can I can picture Billy doing something similar. I mean, Billy is a big, aggressive, loud friend of mine. Uh, Thankfully, he's on my team. Uh,
Yes.
but I can see him maybe not necessarily dangling the guy by his ankles, but like I'm sure something very close to that actually happened.
Yeah. That reminds me of the Suge Knight Vanilla Ice story.
Yeah. Oh,
You
yeah.
know.
Yeah. I didn't even think of that. I
Yeah.
just noticed. Oh,
Yeah.
well.
I thought it was just on your shirt.
Yeah. There's a
Oh,
window, right?
right
Oh well.
on. Well, that's cool. I know, for a lot of us growing up, we were always big fans of like SOD because they of course push the limits, speak English or die, and what have you. And then of course MOD, and I mean shit, Billy's still going with MOD,
Yeah.
which is fantastic. And the musicians he's got around him are fantastic. Also, like Mike Arellano, I probably said that wrong, but he's a beast of a drummer.
Yeah.
Um, those are that's why I like this book though, is like to hear these stories, and especially about bring in icons like Lemmy, right? In the Nashville Pussy story is like
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool as shit, you know?
Yeah, I was stoked to be able to like to have what's her name? Corey's story kind of merge into including Lemmy in there. I was like, oh, that's perfect.
Yeah.
That's so great. Because now Lemmy's in the book, you
Yeah.
know? And yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's what
So,
everyone wants. You know, everyone wants a Lemmy story,
yeah,
you know, and that was, you know, I think, you know, coming from both worlds, right? The heavy metal world and the punk rock world, like Motorhead was like the ultimate crossover. Everyone loves them, right?
totally. Yeah.
Doesn't matter what side of the fence. And they were just really good rock and roll. And Lemmy was like, you know, the king of rock and roll. That's just what he is, you know?
He was the ultimate of he just did not give a fuck what you thought. It was like this is me, this is how I roll, and either come along or get the fuck out of the way.
Yeah,
It
and
was
it's right. We that's how we know him, and then you hear stories like the Dave Grohl Lemmy story where Lemmy was like backstage and he's smoking and he's drinking, and you know Dave's like, "Hey, this is my mom," and Lemmy's like, "Oh shit, I don't remember if mom or daughter," and he's like, "Oh shit," he puts a cigarette in his drink and puts it to the side, and he's like, "Hi, nice to meet you," you know,
yeah,
like
awesome.
how fucking rock and roll is that to go from like, yeah, I'm just let me oh shit, oh hey.
Yeah, it's great. I love stuff like that when you kind of you peel away the tough exterior and you're like, oh, you're just a sweetheart, really.
Yeah.
Just a nice dude. Like it's
It
awesome.
that's fantastic, you know, because
Yeah.
of course we were always taught like, oh, heavy metal, rock and roll, punk rock, they're all, you know, they're all bad. It's the devil's music, and you get into it. Like I went to a show Saturday night actually, and literally walk in the club and everyone's like, hey, hugs, you know, like I haven't seen you in a week, you know, how's it
Yeah.
going? Like it's just a big family.
It is. It is. It's awesome. I love
It's-
it.
yeah, me too. And these connections too, where we can sit and have, you know, conversations about all that stuff. So, like, I know you did, you started it back in 94. How long, when you did it initially, how long did it take you to like get all the stories together?
Initially it was pretty quick. Because, I don't know if MySpace existed at that point yet. And if it did in 93 when I started or 94, it wasn't it wasn't that easy to get a hold of bands. Like we were literally like trying to find we were calling labels to see how or booking agents to try and find how do we get a hold of the Melvins or how do we get a hold of whoever. I think we pulled that story. I don't think it's in the new one. Anyway, um, so it was difficult. The one benefit I had was I was living and working in San Diego at that time, and literally next door to my building where I worked was the Casbah, which is the San Diego club.
Hmm.
So, and I had a good relationship with the owner. So I would literally just walk down the stairs of my building and make a U-turn and walk right into the Casbah and just was there all night. And I just lived up the hill. So it was like my whole little compound. So we would I say we because Gary, the publisher, would help too. And he and I would just go to the Casbah and try and interview whoever was there and see if they'd give us a tour story. That's really how it happened back then.
God, that's like that's really cool because now, you know, with social media, it's, you know, send them a message. Hey, you know, you into that? You know, and that I feel is a lot more personal.
Yeah, it really was. It was really limiting too because I didn't know how to get a hold of some people. This time, like, I mean, I made a dream list. I'm all, who do I want in this book? The first book, I'm really happy with it, but it was kind of whoever we could get. do
Hmm.
you know, oh, so and so knows the bass player of whatever band. And so we'd use friendships to get in this book. Man, I mean, anybody I could dream of is on, there's some sort of contact for them on Facebook or Twitter or whatever.
Yeah.
So I was just shooting messages off blindly, just saying, hey, this is what I'm doing. Love to include you. Some of them said no. Some of them were like, this sounds great. A lot of them said, I want to write it myself. You don't need to interview me. I'll just write it and send it to you, which is
Uh,
insane. Like, do all my work for me. That's great.
Yeah.
Because transcribing is awful. I don't know if you had to do
Yeah.
that.
No, I haven't. Thank God. It's not something that I want to get into, but yeah, like, hey, I'd like to, interview you for a story. Well, how about I just write it for you and give it to you? Like, hell yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. It's, my this guy was Ricky, Ricky Warwick. He's in a band called the Almighty that I guess they were really big in Europe. I don't think they're that big out here, but he also played in one of my favorite bands, New Model Army.
Okay.
And he's Irish. He lives in Los Angeles, but he is Irish through and through. And man, I interviewed him and recorded the conversation. It was so hard to understand what he was saying half the time. Like I almost had to call him back and say, "What are you talking about, Ricky?" Like, but it worked out. But he was the most difficult to transcribe for sure, just because of his accent.
Yeah. Yeah, that I always have trouble with accents just overall. I obviously years of loud music have damaged. I'm listening to ringing right now in both ears.
Yeah.
Um and I live in Kentucky, and sometimes it's not a problem at all. Other times you're like, what? What? Like, can you like slow down and enunciate just a little more? I'm a like, okay, okay, like we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I have the same thing. I have a little like tube canister that I keep my earplugs in that are just on my keychain because I don't go anywhere without them anymore.
I I have the same thing.
Perfect. Yeah. Gotta if you want to be able to hear when we get older, gotta put those things in now.
Yeah, I know. I tried to, I take my kids to a lot of shows, and I always try to tell them like, hey, I when I was in my, teens and 20s and hell, probably most of my 30s, I was like, man, I'm good. And then my ears started ringing, and it was like one day not too bad, and then it's like they ring for a week, and now it just doesn't stop. And I'm like, you guys make sure you're wearing earplugs because this sucks.
Yeah. I honestly I prefer it now. I'm so used to earplugs that when I take them out or forget to put them in at a show, I can't, it's too loud for me. Like I have to put them in.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm happy with it now, but it took a long time to get used to them, as I'm sure you did too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, because like initially you're like, I really want the loud stuff, and now it's like you you take them out and they play a note, and you're like, oh man, I was not ready.
Yeah,
It's so funny the older we get, how our perceptions change on everything. Like, oh, I really do need to save my hearing.
yeah, totally.
Like, uh, what like with the re-release revised version, I guess would be the better term. Do you have a goal in mind, or just put it out there and let's see what it does?
Yeah, honestly, the my first goal was to get a story from Iggy Pop, and that didn't happen. But he was
Yet.
the when I made my dream list, he was at the top. I got to his manager, and his manager said he presented it to Iggy, and his manager just said, "Well, I didn't hear back from him, so he gets a lot of requests." I'm like, "Okay, that's fair enough. I mean, at least I know I made it as close as I could to Iggy."
Yeah.
So I think that I don't have any like monetary goals or even sales figures. The biggest thing I hope is that the publisher recoups, honestly. Like, I don't want it to cost anybody any money because it was a lot of fun to do.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it looks bitchin'. Like, I'm really, my friend is a graphic artist who should have gotten paid tons and tons of money for doing this book, and he did it for free. And I just think it looks so much better than I even dreamed it was going to look. When I saw a picture of it in my head and was describing it to him, he's like, "I gotcha," and he just nailed it. So yeah, honestly, that's my biggest goal is that it doesn't cost anybody any money, and if people buy it and read it, I hope they laugh because I laugh every time I read it. There's something in there that gets me, even after 50 readings of it.
Yeah. Well, like so far, again, I'm still almost brand new into it, just finished the third story and I'm like, Jesus, I fucking love this, dude. This is so good.
That's so great.
It's,
Did the get you said you read up to the Get Up Kids? Was it the what's it Crazy Tony? Was that is
yeah,
that
it's Crazy Tony.
the one where he was looking for hookers in the yellow pages under H?
Yes.
Just killed me. It's so funny.
Like
And I can see it happening.
that shit, there are so many stories like that in the tour world. We were uh I'm not gonna say any names, but we were like backstage with some bands and talking, and one of the bands was talking about how one of the tours they did, every restaurant they went to, they did upper deckers.
Oh,
Someone's like, "What's an upper decker?" They're like, "Oh, you take off the lid and you shit in the tank." Like,
wow.
like you did it at every restaurant? Like, oh yeah, the Chinese restaurant was pissed, you know. But all that stuff, being
Yeah.
uh being nerds like you and I, um, I think there's a lot of us out there that don't I don't know, have the drive or just don't take the opportunity when they have it to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to see like you put out the book and not just once but twice now, do it, revise it and put it back out is really, really freaking cool.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really happy that we took out 20 stories from the original one and really polished them up. Like, we didn't change anything, but we fixed the typos and edited for clarity and stuff. And I'm so
Hmm.
much happier with the old stories now. And then to be able to add like 50, I think 54 new stories. There's like 50 new bands, and a few of them gave me more than one story each. And I pretty much put anything that anyone told me I put in. Like, there was no, like, there was no, uh, me judging the story saying this is not cool enough because I love them all.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's like I think that's a really good attitude because like they're all sharing stories and just the fact that they shared the story to begin with is really freaking cool. And to have all of these awesome artists, be a part of it is like that's like a fucking three-pointer, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
a what a cool book. Do you have plans to do maybe another one or a similar style book in the future?
I'm already starting a list of bands that I didn't include in in the revised version. So if the opportunity comes up, I've definitely there's smaller bands than a lot of the bands that are in the book now, but they're either friends or they were really important to me back in the day. And they just somehow slipped through the cracks. Well, plus, I mean, the book's almost it's just under 400 pages. I mean, like, how many, you know,
Yeah.
in my like, but so yeah. So if I guess if this book recoups and the publisher says, let's do another one or let's add some stories or whatever, like I don't have the list in front of me, so I can't even think of who's on it, but I would definitely do it if they want to. There's no specific plan to do it right now, but
But
and
you're
I'm
open to it.
yeah, I'm sure the graphic designer would strangle me if I if I say, hey, we're doing another one.
Maybe. Might give you a huge hug,
Yeah, that's true.
you know? Like I'm sure everyone that is a part of that enjoys being a part of it because it's not just a hey, this is a biography about one artist. It's like this is a whole fucking genre, and a lot of shit in there. So, super cool to have, and I say one genre, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, a lot of different artists to be a part of it. I like that so many people were so willing to be like, yeah, like let's do it. I'll give you a story. Like, shit, yeah.
Yeah, me too. It was really cool. And I think before we started, I told you what a dorky fanboy I am, and to be able to talk to some of those people on the phone, like I mentioned before, Jello Biafra, who had me call him at dinner time, and then he told me to call him at dinner time. I called him at dinner time. He said, "My food's on the table. It's going to get cold." And then we end up talking for an hour, and he's trying to help me get other. He's the one that helped me get an interview with Ian MacKaye from Minor Threat. He's like, you need to talk to Ian, but you don't talk to him about a Minor Threat story. Talk to him about a Teen Idol story where they get chased around Chinatown in Los Angeles by a biker gang whose equipment they ruined. Like,
Oh,
so I emailed Ian just out of the blue and said, Jello said I should reach out to you. Like me and Jello are best friends now. And Ian replied and gave me two stories actually.
hell yeah.
So being able, and so I got to talk to Ian for a few times. I talked to Lee Ving from Fear. I
Fear.
talked to Jello, uh, Glenn Matlock, the original bass player from the Pistols.
Hmm.
While he's driving around London in his car, he's telling me a story. I'm like, this like my head with the dorky fanboy in me was just I could barely contain myself.
Over the moon, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, like I absolutely know because it's what everyone wants to do, right? Like I want to talk to these people. I want to get the stories. I have a conversation. Well, you just need I'm going to call it an angle, but and that's kind of what it is, right? Like, hey, I'd like to do this and surprisingly enough, a lot of people are like, I'm on board.
yeah.
Shit, you are? This is so cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
So is there anyone like in the revised version, is there someone in there that you didn't think possible to get that you got that
Yeah. Yeah. There's uh you know who the one that I didn't think I was gonna get and was really difficult was the Damned because I have loved that band. I saw the first time I saw them was 1982, and I have loved them since probably before then. And I sent a message to Captain Sensible on Facebook, and he replied. He and I had had a little bit of email or Facebook message conversation about some photos I took that he liked and asked me to send them to him. Uh, but that was years ago, and I emailed Captain. I said, "Hey, this is what I'm doing. Give me a tour story." And he's all, "I can't remember any of them." So I'm like, "Oh man, like one of my favorite bands, I'm not going to get in the book." And then it turned out that one of my friends from California is friends with Rat Scabies, the drummer. And he said, I can hook you up with Rat. So I was sitting on my couch in my living room talking to Rat Scabies, getting tour stories from him. So it was exciting. It was to be able to include the Damned and the fact that it was Rat was really cool too. Uh,
Yeah. So
he didn't
close
really,
to it not happening,
yeah, he didn't really have he knew what it was about, like what the story or that I was going to ask him about a tour story, but he was not prepared with the story, so it was kind of difficult getting stories from Rat just because I had to like prod him and say "What happened on this or what happened on this. But I was lucky that I got a story from, I don't know if you know that. Do you remember the Adverts? They're like from the late 70s London punk rock band. Gary
Mm-mm.
Gilmore's Eyes are there. They toured in support of the Damned in 1977, and the bass player of the Adverts gave me a story about a show on that tour. So I was able to ask Rat his memories about that. So that helped. That was probably his at least longest story that he gave me, because most of his stories were like 2 or 3 sentences because he wasn't really prepared. But that one, he's like, oh yeah, I remember that. And he goes off on there's these local towns people basically trying to riot because there was a punk rock show in their town.
Yeah, I always like those stories too, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, the town is totally against us. Well, you're just making our crowd more hyped to be there. Like,
Yeah,
come on, you know,
exactly.
it's more press. So do you have, I know you said you had a list and you didn't have it in front of you. Is there someone that comes to mind pretty quick that you really hope you can get for, I'm gonna say you're gonna do another, another, because I think it's fucking awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, you know who? Well, I would reapproach Iggy. I just have to.
Yeah.
Uh, but something that's more attainable would be like the Descendants, who I've been friends with the Descendants since the 80s. And Bill, the drummer, was like, yeah, yeah, I'll give you a story. And then I said, Bill, your bass player Carl's gonna give me a Descendants story. Why don't you give me a Black Flag story? And Bill ended up pulling the Captain Sensible and saying, "Oh, I don't remember any."
Oh
So
shit.
he didn't want to do it. And then uh, Carl said he was going to write it for me, and I mentioned online, I think, that I got a story from John from the Asexuals.
Mhm.
John from the Asexuals went on to be in the band called the Doughboys from Canada.
Yeah.
And the Doughboys and the Descendants toured a lot. So Carl reached out and said, "Is he giving you the whatever story? I can't remember the subject." He's all, "Because that's the one I'm working on, and I don't want to double up."
Mm.
And it, I told him it was the Asexual story, and then Carl never came through with this.
Ah,
So I would definitely go back to Carl and get one because the Descendants are in. There's a revised story. I'm from the earlier book that the Descendants have in the book, but it was more, how do I say this properly? I was really good friends with their roadie who went by Bugface. That's what everyone called him, Bug. And he passed away a few years ago, so it was more out of me loving Bug.
yeah.
Putting, I wanted to include him in the book, even though the story is basically about Milo driving over the lawn, somebody's lawn, and ruining their grass. Like it's not the greatest story, but Bugface gave it to me, and I love that guy.
Hmm.
I had to keep it in. But, did I answer your question, or I just ramble off on other
You've
topics?
you absolutely answered my question, right? Because I didn't get one, I got two. Of course, the reapproach to Iggy, and I think everyone loves the Descendants, right? So to be able
Yeah,
to have a couple of stories from them in the next one would be super, super cool. So you guys better give him one. Like, come
yeah.
on. Um,
Well, there's one more too. If I could, the my favorite band since high school is Stiff Little Fingers,
mhm.
and I asked the singer Jake Burns on Facebook, like, hey, this is what, same story. This is what I'm doing. I told him, I said, you've been my favorite band since 1980. I've seen you a billion times. Will you give me a tour story? And he replied pretty quickly, but he was like, I really think that tour stories are better told than written. And all of mine have been told so many times that I don't, he basically said no, but he said it in a very nice way.
Yeah.
And I was just gutted. Like, this is my guy, like this is my favorite band. But he was really nice about it, and I ended up going to Henry Clooney, who was in the original version of Stiff Little Fingers, and I don't know if he was kicked out or if he quit or whatever, but I got a story from Henry. Um, so I still got my Stiff Little Fingers in the book, but I really wanted one from Jake, so I would reapproach him too, and maybe forceful is not the right word. I would maybe be a little more persistent to or beg a little harder.
Persuasive, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Please, please, come on, please.
yeah,
Yeah. You know, it almost lends itself to like you doing a weekly or a monthly like interview with someone for stories on like a a YouTube channel or something.
yeah. That'd be cool. I'd probably be more comfortable talking talking if I did a few of those.
Uh, You know, it's just another way to really fanboy out too, which is like, oh, this is super cool,
Yeah,
you know. Um, that's I mean, that's what I started doing. Like I just whatever bands I can, get, I'm gonna get. And I just did John Bush and I love his voice. Um, so I was like, oh, this is man, I'm a fucking nerd. This is so cool.
so,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. I love that, man. I love to nerd out, and somehow somehow it works out. Like you can think about like, oh, that band's super cool, and then next thing you know, you're on the phone or on a video chat with them, and you're like,
yeah.
holy shit, yeah, it's great.
Like, oh my God, I'd never thought in a million years.
Yeah,
So you go to a lot of concerts?
I do. I've been slowing down a little bit, but yeah, I live in Long Beach, California
Mhm.
now. And there's a great bar venue not far from me. It's like 2 miles, 3 miles, called Alex's Bar. Kind of the good they're they're the equivalent of the Casbah, or like I wouldn't call it, yeah, they're the equivalent of San Diego's Casbah is Alex's Bar. They've been around for 20 years. They get like all the local bands play there. They get the smaller touring bands that fits like 150, maybe 200 people
Okay.
on a crowded night. But I mean, he gets big bands that will come in there and they either announce it and sell tickets or they don't announce it and Alex just calls people. But I mean, I saw X there not too long ago with like 150 people.
Right on.
Um, he had Jesus and Mary Chain play in there unannounced and for free, and just called like 100 people and said, "Come on down."
Come on
Uh,
my way.
yeah, the Damned played there, which is what I mean. They in California, the Damned are good for probably, I don't know, 500 to 800 at
Hmm.
least, maybe more people than that. And this is a tiny room to see the Damned. So uh, I love Alex's. It's a great place to see bands, and I mean, I just jump in a lift. Uh, it's like $10 to get me there. I still drink too much, so I can safely get home and not have to worry about driving or parking or any of the bullshit. It's great.
Yeah. I love that. There's a big like hardcore band from here, Knocked Loose. Um, they did so for their release, they did 2 nights at this 2,000 capacity room. It's like Friday, Saturday. And on Wednesday, they announced they were playing this 300 cap room.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, I am not missing that at freaking all. And it was insane. Like people were we weren't there for 30 minutes and some dude had just a shiner's eye was swollen shut. I'm like, okay, this is going to be a fun show.
Yeah. It's that's great. Yeah, I a small venue.
Yeah.
I, it's where I think it's where my heart lies, in the small venues. Sounds corny, but true.
No, it's the absolute truth. I like I'll go to bigger venues to see a band, but I've really like those 100 to 300 cap rooms are like that's where I'm comfortable because you know almost everyone in the crowd, you know the bartenders, you know security, and everyone's like I ran into one of my favorite venues here, Portal. I ran into security and the manager at an event earlier, and I was just like, "Hey, I didn't think you guys would be here. Like, this is freaking cool." And they're like, "Hey, dude, what's up?"
Yeah,
Uh,
that's awesome. Yeah.
yeah, it's that camaraderie, you know, that I feel we as humans really need to help our mental health.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's
Yeah, but
super.
similar. I was out to dinner with my wife just last weekend, and we bumped into Alex from Alex's bar with his wife and kids in the same restaurant. We're just like, oh hey. They were just finishing and we were just starting. Eat together, but it was so and so's playing at my bar tomorrow night. But
On
so
my
yeah,
way. Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. I love the community that's around us.
Yeah, because it's a lot more than just seeing someone at a show, right? You really you become family. You know, you walk in and everyone's
Totally.
hugging and like, "Hey, dude, I haven't seen you in a minute." You know, how's your wife? How's your kids? Or whatever. And it's like, oh, I don't feel so weird when I'm here. You know,
Yeah, totally.
I love it.
Totally.
Uh, Greg, I greatly appreciate your time. Um, I I'm gonna be honest. I hope you sell 1 million copies of this book because it's absolutely fantastic, and I think there are a lot of people who will absolutely enjoy the stories in it. And I want to see the next one with Iggy Pop in there.
I do too. Thanks, man. I appreciate that very much. You know, today, I don't know, today is actually the official pre-order day. It's the first day that it's been available for pre-orders. Uh, but I'm not sure when this is going to come out, actually.
Probably about a week.
So yeah, July 25th is the pre-order day, and all the pre-orders will ship. Oh, hey, look. Sorry. All the pre-orders will ship by September, and then it'll be the actual street date is until October. So pre-orders let you get it early, which I like.
Yeah, me too. So I'm gonna go pre-order it now because I have an advanced copy, but I want the real copy.
Wait, oh, you have the PDF,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Uh, yeah. I have like two copies right now. So, or I would say I'll send you one, but I don't have them right now.
No, I'm gonna buy it. Like I I like it. I'm gonna support it, like
Thank you.
I'm I'm all about that. But it's like, bands are like, "Hey, I'll send you a free something." Like, "No, no, I like your band. I'll absolutely buy something because I want you to keep making music." This is I get the enjoyment, you get a little money, like this works for me.
Yeah, that's great. That's cool.
Well, Greg, go have yourself a great night. And man, I wish you the best, and I can't wait to see what else comes from you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for going easy on me too.
You were an easy conversation. I think it flowed really well.
Cool. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, have a great night.
You too. Take care.
Thanks. See ya.
Bye.